Hello and welcome to a Wheels Boy quick review of the EA1, an all-new, all-electric city car from Chinese automaker BYD. Now this car is not available for sale yet. We are here at our local BYD dealership to get a look at this static display model. That means we'll give you a look at the exterior and interior styling of this car, as well as some information about powertrain and range. Let's get started. Now, I've been referring to this car as the EA1. The official Chinese name is Haitun. Haitun's direct translation is Dolphin. However, we have been able to confirm with BYD that this will almost certainly not be the official English name. The name EA1, the one that I'm using, comes directly from the EA1 concept car that we showed you at the 2021 Shanghai Auto Show. That is kind of the internal name for the vehicle, and it's the one I'm going to be using for this video, just for simplicity's sake. I thought that the EA1 concept car that we saw at the Shanghai Auto Show was a pretty handsome little car, but I have to say, this production version is even better. I absolutely love the front end design. It's very unique looking and absolutely an electric car. My favorite part, however, is all the little details that you see. Take, for example, the pattern here in the faux grille, something that is repeated down in the kind of fog light area where the fog lights would be, and is also on other parts of the car, but I'll show you that in a moment. Other details that I enjoy, the splashes of color on this version, in this case orange, which I think goes very well with this light silver bottom and top dark gray. That's right, this is a two-tone car. The other thing, of course, is these headlights. Now, these LED strips that you see are quite common these days, but one thing I don't see very often is one for the headlight as well as one here for this center grille area. Now, the way that these kind of come together, I think, is actually a very, very nice look. Let's continue by looking at the side of the car. Here you can get a better look at the two-tone. Again, this is a dark gray and light silver color that I think gives this car a much lower, more sporty looking profile. I think it's a good design choice. We can also see the wheels. So this is again, Chinese name is Dolphin. So there's a lot of kind of wave-like patterns in the design. We'll see even more of that in the interior in a moment. But I think these wheels, 16 inches, are actually a very handsome and I'm sure probably very aerodynamic design. Splashes of orange here on the rocker panel, as well as here on the rear view mirror to break up the colors. Oh, you'll recall that I mentioned the pattern on the faux kind of front grille area that is repeated somewhat here on this, I want to say ABC, this C pillar, which is again a nice little touch that breaks up the design of the car and makes it a little more visually interesting. Speaking of visually interesting, the rear taillights on this car are absolutely wonderful. Now, if you watched our coverage of the excuse me, the BYD stand at the Shanghai Auto Show, you'll recognize these taillights as being very similar to the ones that were on the BYD SUV concept car that we saw at the show. It's a form of traditional Chinese knot tying, and when it's lit, it's absolutely gorgeous. It's really one of my absolute favorite taillight designs that I've ever seen. Let's stop and take a look at rear space, shall we? Now, this is a city car. This is a very small car. So if we can bring our light over here, I am actually pretty impressed with the amount of space that we have back here. I haven't had a chance to sit in the interior. We'll see about rear leg room, but I am actually impressed, especially at the depth of the rear loading, rear cargo area. So very useful amount of space. Here on the interior, the design gets, I think, even more interesting. There's so many interesting details to talk about. Let's talk about the practical things first, however. We've got plenty of storage areas. This is a wireless charging pad for your phone here in the center armrest, as well as a nice little useful area, I think right there, place to put your keys, for example. This area here opens up and you have even more storage and, of course, your cup holders. In fact, there's the keys right there. My probably favorite part, however, is this little row of buttons right here. This is one of the simplest and probably most elegant solutions I've ever seen to putting the buttons here on the center console. These actually are they roll, all of them. There are no click buttons. It's all, for example, this is your volume knob. It's really, really elegant. And then here, this is your transmission knob. So foot on the brake, neutral, reverse, drive. it's actually a very, very good way and very compact way to put all of these different functions here in the center console. Screen-wise, of course, we have our center screen, which I don't have the official information, but I would guess this is probably about, looks to be about 11 inches, maybe slightly more. Plenty big for a car this size and this price. We'll talk price in just a moment, by the way. One interesting thing, this instrument cluster screen, I haven't seen one this small since we drove the Mini EV so long ago. This thing is absolutely tiny, but it does display all of your essential information, including things like your range and your speed and all of that stuff. So very, very simple, but also very clear. Oh my gosh, there's just so much. Let's talk about the patterns here inside. We've got this, it looks like fish scales to me. I don't know, what do you guys think this is supposed to look like? It is a very visually interesting, almost like a rattlesnake maybe. On top of that, we have this kind of aluminum looking plastic, which is a nice kind of shiny look. It doesn't look particularly expensive, but it doesn't feel very cheap. We also have some very, very interesting and well-designed air outlets. Really, guys, there's so many interesting details on this car. It's actually quite impressive for something that's so cheap and so small. Here in the back seat, we can get an idea of the space. Again, this is a pretty small car, but I have to say that I'm quite impressed with the amount of leg room that I see here. In terms of headroom, slightly less impressive. We have this large kind of bump in front of my head. I'm about 175 centimeters tall, about 5'9", and I feel like I have plenty of headroom, but I'll tell you that our intern got in this car and he's a few inches taller than me. He was really banging his head on this. Something to keep in mind. But again, with a car this small, it's hard to expect much more than that. No fold down center armrest. We have a nice single cup holder here. I hope your friend didn't bring any drinks. In terms of the design details, very similar to the front. We have this kind of snake skin or fish scale kind of look, as well as these orange accents. Overall, it seems like actually quite a comfortable place to be. All versions of the EA1 are powered by a front-mounted electric motor, but there are two distinct motors available. The first one is 70 kilowatt hours and 180 newton meters of torque. 70 kilowatts is probably around a little over 100 horsepower. 180 newton meters, we'll say somewhere around 130 pound-feet. However, if you spring for the top-of-the-line version, you get one that has, let's see, 130 kilowatts, closer to 200 horsepower, and 290 newton meters. We'll say around 200, a little over 200 pound-feet of torque, of course. There is also two battery pack options. One is the 30.1 kilowatt hour, 30.7 kilowatt hour, as well as a 44.9 kilowatt hour. That first one, the smaller battery pack, will give you a claimed NEDC range of 301 kilometers, whereas the larger one, the 44.9, will give you 405. The EA1 is not officially for sale yet, but they are offering a pre-sale price of about $15,000 to $19,000. Of course, as you guys have noticed, we haven't been able to do an actual driving portion of the video. We look forward to giving you a full review, including driving, in the future. Thanks for watching.